Hi guys. So Boris Johnson won. he defeated the European Union. He achieved his goal of signing a trade deal. Now, I've been talking about this before for some time, how Boris Johnson would run down the clock and he would basically pontificate to the general public. He would declare victory over the European Union. And it was a little bit more toned down than I had actually expected. I was half expecting to hear God Save the Queen, pumping out while he was declaring victory. That wasn't the case, so he didn't completely take something out of Donald Trump's playbook. Now, you're going to hear him answer a question from Robert Preston, a journalist, and Boris Johnson is either confused or he's trying to lie with his answer. So let's hear the question and then Boris Johnson's response.
You need to unmute, Robert.
Prime Minister, you said all along you wanted a Canada-style deal, but what you've agreed means that we in the UK have to follow EU rules on subsidies, on tax, on workers' rights, on the environment, or potentially incur the imposition of tariffs. That's right, isn't it? I mean, we've just heard Ursula von der Leyen say that she got her level playing field, which you've explicitly rejected all the way through. You also just said there would be no non-tariff barriers. Again, that's not right. From January the 1st, as a result of leaving the customs union, and Michael Gove has been warning about this week in, week out for months, there is a ton of new bureaucracy on British businesses, lots of new non-tariff barriers. This is not to say the deal is a bad deal, but you're not selling it correctly, are you? You're mis-selling it.
No. Rob, I must respectfully disagree with you, because there is indeed a clause in the deal which is nothing like as damaging as it was, and is, in my view, neutralised, which says that if either country feel that the other one is in some way undercutting them or dumping in some way, then subject to arbitration, and provided the measure is proportionate, and that, I mean, independent arbitration, not arbitration by the European Court of Justice, but subject to an independent panel, they can, if they really choose, put on tariffs.
Now, but that's exactly what Robert said. Robert said that if you don't follow the rules, then you will suffer sanctions, or in this case, tariffs. Now you're just repeating what he said, and you're saying, yes, that's true. Now, I don't know if Boris hasn't been sleeping well, or he's tired, or he's confused, but he's just repeated what Robert Preston has said and disagreed with him.
To protect their consumers and their businesses. And to give you an example of the kind of thing where that might occur, for instance, in the UK, we want to go further on animal welfare standards. And it might be that we do things, for instance, on how you rear pigs, banning sow crates and so on, that would incur extra costs for our pig farmers. And it might be that bacon coming from elsewhere from the EU was at risk of, therefore, of undercutting us. We might, under those circumstances, consider imposing tariffs. I think it's highly unlikely, but we might consider it. It would have to be subject to arbitration. It would have to be proportionate according to the arbitrator, and under no circumstances would we be in any way constrained, legally or otherwise, by anything that the EU did or chose.
Okay, but you've just contradicted yourself. You said that if there is undercutting, then there would be sanctions, there would be tariffs. And if you decided to increase animal welfare standards and the EU did not, then you could go to arbitration, you'd go into arbitration, and the EU would suffer sanctions. They would suffer tariffs. Now, you have said that it's highly unlikely that you would impose tariffs. I don't know why. Wouldn't you want to protect your industry? If you increase the standard and they did not, and your farmers are suffering the extra cost, surely you would want to impose tariffs on the EU products to level the playing field. Boris Johnson isn't making a lot of sense here. He's saying, first of all, Robert Preston made a valid point. Ursula von der Leyen has said the level playing field is basically protected. Now Boris Johnson is saying that, yes, it is, but we wouldn't respect it. And then he doesn't mention anything about the EU side. The EU could increase, for example, worker standards. And if the UK didn't follow through, the UK would face sanctions, tariffs.
To do themselves, nor furthermore would there be any role for the European Court of Justice. And for people at home who have zoned out while I've been talking about this.
Now, I don't know. Now, of course, Boris Johnson should know more than I do, but Boris Johnson is not always very trustworthy. But if I'm wrong, please do correct me in the comment section. But as far as I know, the role of the European Court of Justice is in respect to when European law is infringed. So technically Boris Johnson is correct, but as long as European law is not infringed. Now, there are many parts of trade are not affected by European law. So the European Court of Justice wouldn't get involved anyway. So saying that the European Court of Justice will not be involved isn't really a victory, because they wouldn't be involved anyway. Now, I don't know if there are parts of this agreement that will allow the European Court of Justice to be involved, or the European Court of Justice will have no role. But once again, this is not, and I've said this before, this is not a huge victory, because, okay, you're taking the European Court of Justice out of the picture, but you're going to have some arbitration. I know for Brexiteers, the word European is a dirty word, so they don't want European Court of Justice. If it was International Court of Justice, then that's perfectly okay. Once again, I don't understand why, that would be okay, but European Court of Justice is not okay. It's just because it has the word European at the front. And I've said this before, going to the WTO, you don't rule the WTO. You're handing responsibility over to someone else. You're handing arbitration over to someone else. And in the same case here, having an international, independent body to do arbitration, there isn't really a difference if it was the European Court of Justice or someone else.
Let me tell you, this is a very, very long day's march from where we were a few years ago. You will remember, Robert, when we were talking about basically having a common rule book with the EU and having dynamic alignment with EU laws, so that the UK was forced to keep step. And that has gone from this treaty insofar as the EU wanted it, and there is no role for the European Court of Justice, whatever. So I think it's a great treaty. And as for your point about non-tariff barriers, yes, I think it's important to stress. What I'm talking about is barriers on the grounds of your plugs won't work in our country, therefore they're banned or whatever. That kind of technical barriers to trade, and there's a lot in this treaty to try to reduce all that kind of thing, make sure that doesn't happen. That's a good thing. That's a good thing for businesses and consumers, and in that sense, it's a great free trade deal. But I must stress to people getting ready for.
Okay, so Boris was a little bit opaque there. So, Boris, is it completely open for trade, or is it not? Are there some aspects that are not included in the tariff-free and quota-free trade? So it seems that it's a free trade deal, but not completely. Now, once again, I think we need to look at the detail. We need to see what is actually in this agreement. We need to stop listening to what politicians are saying. We need to look at the detail itself. And it is a 2,000-page document. We haven't access to it yet. It will be interesting to see when it will be released. And of course, this will have to pass through Parliament. But as I've said before, this will fly through Parliament. Keir Starmer has suggested that the Labour Party will support it. The ERG are quite limited in what damage they can do to stop Boris Johnson. So he will get it through Parliament and it will be signed into law. But he's not consistent with his rhetoric, and he's not consistent with what he has said before. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot. I want to say a big thank you to all of my patrons. You ensure that this channel continues to exist. I'm eternally grateful for all of your support. If you join Patreon, you will receive instant access to our Discord server, where we have both audio and video chats. You can chat with me and other patrons, where we discuss important and non-important issues. Becoming a patron per month costs about the same as a large coffee, so why not check it out?